pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Of 1991, which Gene has already said has the worst title of the year.
Yeah.
Highlander 2, The Quickening. Now, this was the sequel to the original Highlander. Not such a bad title. A cult film in some circles, but you'd have to be more than a cultist. You'd have to be a zombie to enjoy Part 2, The Quickening. The movie takes place at a time in the future when the Earth's ozone layer has been depleted and the planet huddles under some kind of protective shield that's administered by an evil international cartel. The film stars Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert as two immortals from the planet Zeist who find themselves in the middle of this situation.
But if you can summon it all up at one time, in one place, you can accomplish something glorious.
The plot of Highlander 2, The Quickening, is one of the most hilariously incomprehensible experiences I've had in a long time. This movie shows real evidence of having been edited almost at random. Let's take out this and this. And the science in the movie is just as crazy. I think in a way what got me, though, was the interlocking of all of these plots. The immortals from the planet Zeist, who are caught in a time warp of their own involving the fact that they got oriented in Scotland 500 years ago, plus events in the year 1999 and more events in the year 2025, plus the cartel, plus the ozone shield, plus the mysterious killer, plus the beautiful independent scientist who exposes the secret of the ozone. You know, in a way, all of this insanity could have added up to something that would have made a great bad movie. But Highlander 2 is so crazily put together, you get the impression that a lot of the key scenes were just never filmed.
It is pretty incomprehensible.
Yeah.
The only question I have is something you said earlier, which is that you'd have to be a zombie to enjoy this, and I'm not exactly sure why a zombie would.
Well, you know, as a matter of fact, I don't think a zombie would like this film.
That's how closely I listened.
Probably
Okay.
proves why you didn't like it.
That's it for this week. Next week, we'll be back with a special show on the Academy Award nominations.
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and OverthinkingOscars.wordpress.com. Here with my immortal co-host, the critic, dare I say legend, from TalkMovie.com, Mr. Doug Heller. How the heck are you today, sir?
Okay. Now let me just see if I can get this straight. You come from another planet, and you're mortal there, but you're immortal here until you kill all the guys from there who have come here, and then you're mortal here unless you go back there, or some more guys from there come here, in which case you become immortal again here. Something like that.
This is the final week of our theme month, and wow, I picked a
hate
doozy.
you for this.
This is the most convoluted piece of shit I've ever seen in my life. I watched this last night again, and I was like,
this is Highlander 2, The Quickening.
The Quickening. And The Quickening is an hour and 46 minutes long.
Which, I mean, so, like last night, I was when we were finally, we were delayed because life, and
Yeah.
And it had been like probably a solid month since I'd watched this.
Mm.
And I went into Amazon, I got into it, I found it, I got onto the play screen, I was about to hit OK to start playing it, and I'm like, I can't do this to myself again. I've already
I
watched
have
it
a
twice.
life. Yeah. I have life, man. I have things
I've
to
already
do.
watched it twice, and that I have officially now, thanks to you, seen 2 more Highlander movies than I ever wanted to see in my life. And I've only seen Highlander and Highlander 2, so
This is a movie that I have seen in pieces, which is appropriate because it's a movie that seems like it was made in pieces. I saw it, I would see scenes from it, and then a couple of months later I would see more scenes from it. Then a couple of years later maybe I would see more scenes from it.
Orson Welles' Othello it looks more continuous, and that was shot over like 5 years
Oh dear God. I mean,
in like 30 different locations.
I can't. Um, I watched this, and this is the nicest thing I'm going to say about this movie. This is the one movie out of this month, and we've talked about five. This is our fifth movie that we've talked about this month, that never felt like a cash grab. It genuinely did feel like somebody was at some point was trying to make a movie out of this. Because let's face it, the other four were basically joyless cash grabs
Oh, well, I mean, and the series.
in the series.
Here's the thing, though. The first one was awful as it was.
Like, way better than this.
Way better.
It was better than this.
Better, but not way better. I still
Anything is way better than this.
pretty much most things are.
Yeah, are way better than this.
But I watched the first one a long time ago because I had friends that were really into the TV show, and I watched the movie.
Yeah.
And it was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. It's completely and utterly ridiculous. How they conned Queen into doing the full soundtrack, I will never understand.
Well, they conned Queen into doing the first soundtrack.
Oh yeah, and it's like this one they didn't even have the rights to the soundtrack from the first one.
Just the music.
No, I don't even think I heard any of the music from the first one.
There's some orchestral strains of Who Wants to Live Forever.
But there's definitely no...
There's no Freddie Mercury.
No.
There's no singing.
I just think it's hilarious that the sequel couldn't even afford the rights to the soundtrack for the first movie.
Oh. God help me.
Any movie that can cast Sean Connery as a Spaniard by way of Egypt...
How is he in this movie?
So this is...
He got beheaded in the first one.
This is the second biggest piece of bullshit in this movie. Because all they decide to do, they decide to bring him back, and they explain it, and they say, oh, magic works. And that's it.
Yeah, that's all.
Somehow, magic. And that's literally, they didn't even bother come up with anything. They're just like, magic.
Yeah.
It's like, how'd that happen? Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this... Again, I hated the first one.
I didn't hate it.
I did.
I thought it was an interesting failure, but I didn't hate it.
I hate the first one, and having seen it a second time, I hate the first one. I despise the second one, however.
You almost have to, because this is not a movie. This is it's pieces and parts of something stitched together.
It's a television pilot, is what it is.
That is trying to look like manga or something like that, like a graphic novel, particularly the opening, and it's so convoluted and it is so piecemeal. There are plot holes in this thing. There's stuff, characters come in and out of this movie, and I don't even know where they came from, what their... Well, the purpose behind every single character in this movie is to kill each other. That's the entire purpose of everybody, is to kill somebody. That's...
And I mean, the 80s psycho villain is, like, on full display here. I mean, in the first one, it was Clancy Brown, and in this one...
it's Michael Ironside.
Michael Ironsides, who, I mean... Basically, if you write over-the-top villain, you could just cast Michael Ironside.
If you can't have Michael Ironside in a movie and have him be convincing crazy, you haven't done your job.
Right, right. There's something severely wrong with your screenplay
Because I
because.
love Michael Ironside. But when you
But
have him in your movie and you can't make him convincing crazy, because he comes in halfway through the movie and you're like, well, who is this clown?
well, yeah. Well, no, he's there at the beginning when they get exiled or whatever.
Exile or whatever. Yeah,
What?
that's most
How?
of this movie,
So I.
honestly.
So now let's talk about the Bill and Ted opening.
He's
Didn't it
well,
feel like Bill and Ted?
Connor McLeod is centuries old,
Well, so
and he's an old man. Well, no, he's a fairly young man in old man makeup.
I'm even going beyond that. I want to talk about when they're on the planet, the other planet.
The
And they get
Zeist.
exiled. They get exiled to Earth because they're immortal.
Hmm. To
But they're
Scotland.
but they're not immortal there.
Yeah.
But they are, otherwise they wouldn't have been exiled.
But see, at least in Superman, they explained it because the closer you get to our sun, you gain your power and your strength. But
Yeah, but this
they don't
so they
explain that
basically
here.
no, they contradict themselves within the same paragraph.
Hmm.
They say, "Okay, what we usually do with immortals like you is we send you to Earth because then you can cut each other's heads off and then there can be only one and then you can win the ultimate prize and you can become a human immortal. Or you can
Okay,
come back here and, I don't know, face trial and be mortal there?"
they contradict themselves within their own definition, and this goes back to the first one because you're an immortal and you cannot die unless
Except when
someone
you do.
cuts your head off.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're not immortal.
Mm-hmm. You are
You have super strength.
right. You are mortal conditionally.
You're more like Wolverine.
Yeah, you're conditionally mortal because under every condition you are immortal except beheading.
Right.
So I guess they're conditionally mortal,
Right.
or immortal.
So if
And
you can die, you're not immortal.
right, but then like you get all this power, and I really don't know what it does for you except break a lot of windows and make you super horny for Virginia Madsen to take her in the middle of a dirty alley, which I still
Well, I
don't
mean,
get. I mean,
what is she doing in this movie? I question a lot of Virginia Madsen's choices.
looking very pretty, but
Yeah.
ultimately not really doing much
Not
of
having a
anything.
function in this movie. She comes off, she is
Well,
introduced
she's some
as,
terrorist or something.
yeah, she's a leader. She's a famous terrorist leader. And then sort of um, she gets with Christopher Lambert and,
Which, I mean, I'm sorry to cut in on this one, but seriously, Christopher Lambert
yeah.
as a Scotchman
Mhm.
and Sean Connery
A French
as
actor.
a Spaniard who, when pressed, actually says, "Actually, I'm Egyptian."
Ugh.
Actually, you're not any of that because you're from this other fucking planet that apparently you can and can't remember at the same time. And when you get here, you know that you're immortal, but you don't know you're immortal because I guess Connor was still born somehow and grew up. None of this makes any fucking sense. This
None of
is just
this
the
makes any
stupidest
sense.
bullshit nonsense.
They have people from the planet Zeist that they keep sending to kill Connor McLeod, including the Porcupine Twins,
Which
who just
wouldn't you, if you knew that he had become mortal, why would you send people there to make him immortal again? You are counterproductive to your cause.
well, I
He
mean,
will die of old age.
you could reasonably, because I like the idea of a Highlander. The idea is there can be only one, and when you cut the head off of another immortal, you gain their superpowers. You get struck by lightning and gain their
Right.
superpowers. and become even more, and that's an interesting idea. That's the beginning, the germ of an idea.
And it could be developed into like this super recessive gene that only
Mm.
shows up uh, once every couple centuries in various places in the world. Like it's just it'll happen regardless, and then they get born, and some people find them and they figure it out, and sometimes they never figure it out. I liked that because it was actually kind of grounded. It made the supernatural kind of believable.
Hmm.
Um, the execution of the movie was still piss poor, the first one, but at least when it kind of had made sense if they were people.
Well,
But
the first
then
one at least had it.
when they threw all this crap in, like they completely undermined themselves and made themselves ridiculous.
The first one, I mean, at least the first one had some kind of something resembling a narrative structure. There was at least something there. This one there's none of that.
I mean, it's you know what
It's
the worst part of this is, aside from the terrible age makeup that they've put on Christopher Lambert.
$34 million budget.
No shit. In 1991,
$34 million budget.
that would be somewhere akin to about $60 million right about now.
Remember that scene in Dark Knight when they set the money on fire?
Yeah,
That's
that's
this
pretty
movie.
much yeah.
I
You know, I lost my train of thought as to what the major problem with this is. It's just it just doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't care to. It tells you this is what I was going to say. It tells you everything, and then it does a flashback to show you exactly what you've already been told for no reason whatsoever. Either show the flashbacks or have them catch you up verbally. Don't do both.
And you've got 3 different time periods that you're juggling around here, and none of them make any sense. There's one that takes place in 1999, and then there's the Scottish people from 500 years ago, and then there's the 2024, and it's all mixed together.
But
and
then there's also this other planet which looks like ancient Egypt, but they're sending them to the future, another planet? Like, because they said we're sending you forward in time to this other planet. It's like, well, why do you need to put them forward in time if you're sending them to another planet?
And
The
there's a
hell is
war
the
going
point to
on
that?
there.
I have no idea what the hell they were trying to do with this.
There was no.
The whole trying to dig into this and make it like aliens and crap was the single worst idea the screenwriter could possibly come up with.
They were trying to open up the lore of the first one, and the problem
made
is
it
when they
stupid and contradictory all the way around.
Yeah, and it's like you've. This isn't even entertaining if you don't think about it.
No.
This is so poorly made. This is the only movie that I've ever seen that feels like it was so completely ADR'd.
Like everything was written after everything was filmed, and they kind of
Every
assembled
piece
it. And, yeah.
of dialogue feels like it was patchworked on top of the dialogue that was already there.
Mm-hmm.
And because every vocal intonation feels like an octave higher than it should be. And they feel like they're shipping it in from the next room. I don't know how to describe it. It's like I'm watching this last night with headphones on.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like it's you're watching it, and it sounds like the people are talking disembodied.
Yeah.
Like they're you can tell that they're off screen. Like that the sound is not, because the background sound doesn't match.
No.
When they're talking in their
And
voice.
the sound design is all
Oh.
loud banging and clattering, and it's designed to.
And then they just whisper their way through their dialogue.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's just
without captions, I don't think I would have been able to track, at least as
same
far as
here.
I did, what happened in this movie.
Same here.
And it only became clearer to me the second time I watched it. Uh, and it's still not particularly clear to me. I don't.
I think the enemy of this film is editing, because this thing is edited like the editing in this thing is a nightmare.
I think the enemy of this film is the concept of this film.
I think the concept could work. The concept is functional. Um, the concept here is functional. The problem is, never at any time are you ever engaged in what's going on. Because there's so many pieces to keep up with that the movie can't quite keep up with. And it can't, there's this nonsense going on with the planet. There's this stuff going on with the Scotsman from 500 years ago. There's this stuff with this shield.
Mm-hmm.
I never understood the shield.
Okay, so the shield was developed because the ozone layer had depleted, and that shield was blocking out the UV rays, but it also meant they couldn't really see the sky,
Mhm.
this, that, and the other, and the whole impetus, like Virginia Madsen's whole deal in this is that she believes, for no reason other than, I guess, just because she thinks it's true, that the ozone layer has regenerated, has healed itself
Mhm.
after all
And we
these
can get
years
rid of
of
the
not
shield.
getting any toxins, so they can get rid of the shield. But everything's become so dependent on the shield and the power grid and everything that if you shut it down, he says, it would cost the power to the whole world, which I don't really understand how something using a lot of power being turned off would lose all of the power that was going. It would just redistribute it, unless you have the world's worst electrical grid.
Yeah.
But it was in New York, so maybe.
And this is one of those movies where every place you go in New York is an alleyway.
Yeah.
It all looks like shit, and they're all creeps.
Every alley looks like the alley that Batman's parents got shot in.
Right, and everybody is a creep and thug and killer and is going to cut your throat.
After
It's one of
they
those
rape
post.
you.
Yeah, and it was they rape your skull, and every piece of technology is trying to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that dystopian. This is a movie of everything and nothing.
Right, like, so this is the most 80s movie the 90s produced.
Right, right.
Which is kind of funny because between 1990 and 1993 there were a lot of 80s style movies that
Yeah.
kind of hung on, but this is the 80s-ist because I think it was probably made in the 80s and held for a couple of years.
Yeah. I think it
because-
wasn't until Jurassic Park that we ever really felt like that it ever felt like a 90s blockbuster.
Right.
Because
And
even
that
Terminator
was-
2 felt like an 80s blockbuster.
Yeah. Well, because in the early 90s we were getting sequels to the 80s stuff instead of getting new things to kick off going forward.
We're still getting it.
We still have now all this new stuff that we had then is the old stuff now that we want to go away. Like Jurassic Park World
Yeah.
and God, Fast and the Furious and
Fast and the Furious 9.
and it's
Jesus.
technically the 10th film because the spin-off with the Rock and Jason Statham came out a couple years ago.
I saw one of them. I saw one of those movies, and it was the
I've seen
last.
all friggin' 8 of them.
I saw the only one I saw was the last one that Paul Walker was in. Um, of those movies, I will say this: they know how to have fun with stunts. They do know how to have fun with their stunts.
Yes.
I can't say much else about them, but they do know how to do that.
So, when the 8th one was coming out,
Yeah.
everybody was talking about the podcasts I was listening to at the time, were even talking about them, and these were like, snobby art house podcasts that were talking about how much they love the Fast and the Furious series. So I'm like, okay, I'll watch them.
Yeah.
And I watched all 7 of them, and then I went to the theater to watch the 8th one. I saw all of them in under a week.
Oh, mother of God. Yeah, I have not seen all of them.
The only thing I could hear in my head for a week after was an overclocked engine. And I actually had to take time, after I saw the 8th one, I did like a week of French dramas. Like I did the Antoine Doinel. Like I needed something the exact opposite of fast-moving, overclocked cars.
You needed something to remind you of the definition of cinema.
Yeah, something real.
Did you ever see the American Dad episode where Steve and his friends found the script for the next Fast and the Furious movie?
I've seen all of them, so yes, but I don't really remember it.
It was they find the script for the next Fast and the Furious movie, and they're in they're in Steve's treehouse, and they're reading it, and it's this super gay porn version of Fast and the Furious. It's a Fast and the Furious movie with gay porn in it. And they go to the producer and they find out that that version is the one that European audiences get to see, and we get the ones with the porn version with all the porn cut out. And at the end of the movie, at the end of the episode, Stan's mother has moved to France, and she goes into a movie theater and she's sitting down and she leans over to the guy next to her and says, "Have I missed the ass play?" And so my wife and I, every time the Fast and Furious comes out, she asks me, she's like, "Okay, are we going to get the French cut with with the gay porn in it?"
Now, see, either one of you now should just walk into the room if it's on, look over at it, and go, "Did I miss the butt play?
Did I miss the ass play?
Did I miss the ass play?" That just feels like a conversation starter and stopper all in the same breath. Like,
especially if we invite our friends over.
So okay. Let's talk about Michael Ironsides in this.
I like Michael Ironside.
Look,
I know he's been in a lot of shit, but
look, I'm not ragging on him. I'm ragging on the director and the writer who decided that this was the way to go, because he literally kills anybody that gets in his path, for no reason whatsoever, just for the joy of maniacally killing people. I was so distant. I have over the years become very against bystanders being killed. Like, I am really sensitive to bystanders being killed.
That's an 80s thing. It's an 80s thing. Yeah, they wipe out. They take some actor who's working for scale, and they give them a very limited part, and they have them get killed. Basically just as fodder to show you how maniacal and evil the villain really is.
Right. But, I guess I just, even a villain, I assume, is not just a psychopath. Even serial killers, even psychopathic serial killers are not Michael Ironside in this movie.
Right. Right.
Even if you are not a serial killer, but a mass murderer,
Mm.
you still have better sense and more self-control than
Yeah.
Michael Ironside's in this movie. His characterization is a caricaturism.
Well, they all are.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, this whole movie is a caricature, I guess.
Everything is bumped up to level 12. There are a
Except the
couple
pace of the movie, because that dragged like Quasimodo's leg.
well, when you stitch together 8 different movies into some weird, shattered, fractured narrative, that's what you get. Because this is, there are at least 2 or 3 scenes in the movie that are trying for comedy.
Yeah.
Dealing with Sean Connery not understanding the world that he's in. There's a scene, and I don't know if this was meant for.
When he winds up on stage,
Yeah.
how
yeah.
does he not know or figure out that there's a play happening? He was alive during at least some concept of theatrical performance. Like,
Right.
he is not alien to this. This is he didn't
He
grow
would
up
recognize Shakespeare.
I
At
don't think
least.
he would recognize Shakespeare, because
I think he would.
I think his character died in something like 1150, though.
Okay.
Shakespeare didn't come around until what, 14,
15th century.
Yeah, 1400. So I think it was the 10th century or the 12th century when he died. So Hamlet, him not knowing Hamlet, fine, okay, you don't recognize that it's whatever play this is. But the fact that he did not understand stagecraft and that somebody was acting and trying to redo these lines,
Yeah.
it made him look like a simpleton.
Yeah.
And it wasn't funny, it was stupid.
Well, also the scene of him on the airplane,
Oh,
and he's watching this. I don't even understand, because this breaks the reality of the film even more. Is that when he's watching the film of the safety procedures,
mm-hmm.
and it looks like a disaster movie where people
Yeah.
are screaming, and it looks like a disaster movie, and the plane crashes at the end,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm thinking, okay, was that supposed to be a joke?
I guess.
That was just, it was stupid. I'm hoping that was not the 8 minutes they put back. Because I watched the Renegade cut.
Well, that's the only one you can really find now.
Yeah, I watched the Renegade cut, and I was thinking, okay, I hope that wasn't the 8 minutes that they put back in this movie, because this is
Right. So, the dialogue in this is just ridiculously
well,
bad.
you can't get the dialogue
Well,
because
okay,
it's all up an octave. It's up an octave higher, and everybody. So it sounds like almost everybody is shouting
Right.
all the time.
So here's what Sean Connery says to the woman on the plane.
Mhm.
I think after he watches the video.
Yeah.
But on the contrary, Virginia, all of the most beautiful women had dark hair. Helen of Troy, Cleopatra, Nefertiti, Joan of Arc, to name a few. In fact, it's
Saying
well
this to the woman
known
who's sitting next to him.
that these dare-haired ladies like to sit on men's faces.
He's saying
What?
this to the woman who's sitting next to him.
Also, he was dead before Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
So... and she was 14.
Yeah.
And reportedly not all that good looking.
Right.
I don't think the writers knew anything about anything before they started this. They just figured, well,
Wrote something down and never
if it's
figured
old,
that the audience would understand.
if it's old, people will just assume, old is old. It doesn't matter when it actually happens. No, that's not how this works, guys.
Mm-mm.
This is not... I just...
Well, and then the ending, they break into this. They break into the TSC, the shield control, so they can break it down. And Michael Ironside puts them in a room. Okay, this is kind of clever in a James Bond villain sort of way. He puts them in a room with a slowly descending giant fan, which when it reaches them, I'm supposed is going to cut their heads off. Which is okay.
Okay, sure. But what the hell was Ramirez doing?
I do not know. I do not know.
Because, so it looked like, for no damn reason, he was sacrificing himself.
Yeah,
Like, he could have left with them.
right. But he didn't.
But he didn't.
He blew up the fan.
Because yeah, but he stuck his sword down.
Right.
Which, presumably, because it's the folded, Japanese steel, what, 1,000 years before it was supposed to have even been invented? Would that not have stopped the fan itself? Like, but then he poured this magic and it blew up, and he said, I think, the stupidest thing in the movie? Which is...
I love this. This is great.
Most people...
Because he says it twice.
Yes, he does. Most people have a full measure of life, and most people just watch it slowly drip away. But if you can summon it all up at one time, in one place, you can accomplish something glorious. What the fuck does that mean?
He says it twice.
What does that even mean?
No, what I don't get is he's reaching up to push the fan back up with this Highlander power, I guess. Once it starts working,
I guess it's just more of that magic.
Out come the bagpipes.
Yeah, like
and they start playing Amazing Grace. He wasn't
Scottish.
They start playing Amazing Grace. It's just...
He wasn't even Scottish. I mean, Sean Connery was.
Yeah.
The levels of nonsense that are in this movie. I hated this movie more than any of the other four.
Go watch any of his James Bond pictures. Particularly From Russia with Love, because that's a great movie. Mm-hmm. Find a movie, and this is hard to find, but there is a movie from 1979 called Cuba. And it's about a diplomat in Cuba right before the uprising in the 50s. And it's a really, really, really good movie. That's Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Untouchables.
Even
I don't even like Untouchables, but he's so good in it.
You didn't like the Untouchables?
It's okay. It's okay. It's a little. It's
glad that
typical
never made it
De Palma.
around, because I was going to say, hey, that could be a Sean Connery tribute episode because he won his Oscar for it. But if you don't like it, I guess we're not going to do that.
Well, it's all right. It's fractured in that De Palma kind of way.
I only like a handful of De Palma's movies, and that one and Blow Up are like the two major ones that I like.
Yeah. It's all right. It's, but yeah, that one is really good. Sean Connery made 100 movies in his life.
And somehow
I don't know
two
how
of them were Highlander movies.
Two of them were Highlander movies. There's not a good Highlander movie.
I mean, look, I get needing money. Believe me. And there are not many things I wouldn't do to get something to support my family and all, but I really think I would draw the line at a Highlander movie.
If I'm an actor of his caliber, okay, and you can pretty much, at that point, you can pretty much do anything. And your agent calls, and they offer you a project. You say, okay, how big is the part? How much are they offering me? And triple it.
Yeah.
Because they could conceivably make this movie without him, but
They
you know,
absolutely should have made this movie.
should have. Well, it should have made this movie without anybody, but
They shouldn't have made this movie.
I shouldn't have made this movie because I feel so many hands on this. It's badly made, it's badly edited, it's badly told. You can't explain this plot to me.
There's so much going on, and yet absolutely nothing going
Right.
on. Like they throw so like we were saying before, they throw so much in. It's like there's this environmental story, and then there's the other planet story, and the Highlander on the Earth story, and then you've got Ramirez,
The
who's-
shield,
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the environmental part of it.
the environmental part.
So
Yeah.
there's like all these different kind of things colliding, but that's literally all they're doing because none of these stories fit together in any logical kind of way.
Mm-mm.
And so they're literally just stories colliding with each other on screen.
And I've seen several of these. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen several of these. There's not a good one.
Yeah, no, I've seen two more than I ever wanted to, and
Yeah.
I've only seen the first two. So, you know.
The first one is the best one.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is not.
That
Does not paint a very good picture for me.
It's got something in common with Amityville. There have been multiple movies, and there isn't a good one.
Yeah.
There's never been a good one.
No.
You know.
I would argue that there's also the Omen movies.
The first one works for what it is.
I didn't like it. I thought it was a crap movie.
It's an Exorcist knockoff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, the first one became a cult film, and then they've tried and tried and tried and tried again to bring it back, and it just never works. I'm not a Highlander fan. I'm sorry.
I've never understood. It took me forever to realize that the guy on the show is not the same character that was in the movies.
Right.
They're like cousins or some shit. And they're both Highlanders. And then in one of the later movies, I think in like the fourth one or something, they team up with each other because it's after the series.
Mhm.
And they needed some way to connect the two of them, I guess.
Mhm.
None of it makes any sense whatsoever.
Well, I'll say this. Now, this is the worst one out of the movies that we've talked about this month.
Absolutely.
This is by a country mile.
Yeah.
I think probably the only one that actually approaches being a movie might be Jaws 2. Because at least there was a trajectory there.
True.
The movie is bad, but the trajectory is there.
I think Poltergeist 2 was also a movie. I mean, it was largely Poltergeist 1, but it's still a movie.
It's kind of half a movie because it doesn't really. Once it gets to a certain point, it doesn't really go anywhere. Yeah. Men in Black 2 just feels like outtakes of the first one.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters 2 feels like there were too many hands on that script. And,
also just an alternate version of the original.
Right. What was it Bill Murray said about it? Said it needed less slime and more us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but this is horrendous. I mean, unbelievable.
This is retaliation worthy.
Yeah.
And November's not going to be a nice time for you, sir.
Well, this was an offshoot of our Turkey Month, and this was almost Exorcist 2. You know, we were going to talk about Exorcist 2. Exorcist 2 is just boring. At least Highlander 2 is bad in an interesting way. Exorcist 2 is not bad in an interesting way. It's just boring. I mean, it's dull. There's nothing. I was watching that. I was like, there is nothing here to talk about. Because we'd get on a note and just repeat ourselves over and over and over again. It's like, well, this doesn't work. Well, this doesn't make any sense. Well, this doesn't make any sense. Which is, this was just unreal. But fortunately, next month is Pride Month.
Yes,
we've got some good stuff coming up.
These are going to be coming out in a weird kind of very close together to kind of catch us up, because we acknowledge that we're a few weeks behind and that this is not May anymore. But yes, we have Pride coming up, and have you solidified your choices?
Not just yet.
Okay. I think the first one is going to be Dog Day Afternoon.
Great movie.
I just rewatched it.
It's such a relief
to see what, because I couldn't really remember all of the stuff with the gay relationship and the trans character and everything, and I was like, well, maybe it's not big enough to no, it's a major, huge part of the movie.
Yeah.
So. Just to get us, because we're also doing a Patreon exclusive either this month, or we might leave it to next month. We haven't really quite figured that out yet, but it's going to be 3 Men and a Baby, and I hated that movie too. So
that is 3 movies in one, and one of them is really good. The baby stuff is funny.
Yeah.
The heroin subplot, why is that in this movie?
You know what? I asked that same question in Jungle Fever.
Yes. Why is there a drug subplot in this movie?
Which is the only thing that Jungle Fever has in common with 3 Men and a Baby. So yeah, I think Dog Day Afternoon is going to kick off
be
Pride
next.
Month. Is going to kick off Pride Month for us, and I have not landed on a second.
I haven't either.
I'm trying to find something not in the English language.
Mm-hmm. Please tell me it's from France.
It will likely be European.
When you are dealing with films of an intimate manner, when you go French, boy, this.
Well, one of my choices, until I found out that it is practically impossible to find, my second choice was going to be Farewell My Concubine.
Mm-hmm. That is a great movie.
Yes, it is, and but it's not streaming anywhere. It's not on Netflix. It's barely available to buy. On Just Watch It, there's like nothing for it. So I was like,
is that one of those when you type it in, it says "oops"?
No, it recognizes it, but when it says that there's what's streaming, it says "oops." It doesn't look like it's streaming anywhere. So
oops, we couldn't find any streaming offers.
Yeah. So I took that off of the list, even though I do love that movie.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it is. So I'm still kind of trying to see. It's
bad that I can find Highlander 2, but I can't find Farewell My Concubine.
Right.
What is wrong with this world, man?
Anyway, so I think that about does it here for us. You can find all of our back episodes on the podbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can find us and listen to us on iTunes and on YouTube. Hit the like, subscribe. Make sure you enable the notifications so you know when we're posting. Follow us on Twitter at pod_bay. Same over at Patreon, where again we do have an exclusive fire sale review of Star Trek: The Slow Motion Picture.
Oh, we had so much fun with that.
And there will be one, I guess, on 3 Men and a Baby. And I have to come up with something because you're killing me, Smalls. Which actually would be a pretty good candidate for that. Anyway, we thank you so very much for joining us, and the pod bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
Sometimes I don't know where this dirty road is taking me. Sometimes I can't even see the reason why. I guess I keep a gambling, lots of booze and lots of rambling. Oh, it's easier than just waiting around to die. One time, friends, I had them all. I even had a paw, but he beat her with a belt once 'cause she cried. She told him to take care of me. She headed down to Tennessee. Oh, 2 long years of waiting around to die. Well, I come age and I found a girl in a Tuscaloosa bar. She cleaned me out, but it did she fly. I tried to kill the pain. I bought some wine and hopped a train. Oh, it's easier than just waiting around to die. And a friend said he knew where some easy money was. We robbed a man and brother did we fly. Posse caught up with me, drugged me back to Muskogee, and it's 2 long years of waiting around to die. Oh, but now I'm out of prison. Got me a friend at last. He don't drink or steal or cheat or lie, but his name's Codeine. He's the nicest thing I've seen, and together we're gonna wait around and die. Sometimes I don't know where this dirty road is taking me. Sometimes I can't even see the reason why. I guess I'll keep a gambling, lots of booze and lots of rambling, and it's easier than just waiting around to die. Oh, it's easier than just waiting around to die. Thanks, y'all.